Thanks for being here. Oh, did not know that that happened. So grateful that everyone was able to join. We're gonna get started. I think real quick. So first things first, if you need accessibility, if you need ASL interpreting and captions, you can go down to your little CC live transcript button at the bottom, and you'll be able to access the captions there. And then we have Tanasha and Brandon, who are going to be our interpreters for ASL. They are pinned on the screen, so you're able to see them. So if you need that accessibility info, just let me know. So we're going to get started with our native and emotional labor land acknowledgements. So I would like to acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the stolen and traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and that we occupy this land. This acknowledgement does not take the place of authentic relationships with Indigenous communities, but serves as a first step in honoring the land that we're on. And I'm honored to have Roxanne here because kind of part of our land acknowledgement this time is, this was in May. Usually May 5th has been recognized as a National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous People. And there is currently a bill, and Roxanne, maybe you have an update on this, in the Senate. I think it was sitting on the Senate, the Title IX of the Violence Against Women Reauthorization. Part of that act would aim to improve the safety of Indian women and people by authorizing funding for training, equipment, allowing tribal governments access to federal criminal investigation data, creating a pilot project to allow up to 5 Indian tribes in Alaska to implement special criminal jurisdiction. You can learn more at the National Indigenous Women's Resource Center. But I think the last time I checked, that bill was being, Senate Republicans were sitting on that bill because there are provisions in the act that would forbid those convicted of assaulting women from owning guns, which I think is a good thing. But that is, that's kind of where that bill is. And I will drop this in the chat because I think that it's important for, you know, I think in feedback I've heard from Native and Indigenous like communities and friends, is like making sure that when we're sharing these acknowledgements that we are not sharing, one, that it's not just an acknowledgement, that we are building authentic, long-lasting, trusting relationships with Native and Indigenous communities, that we are willing to risk something, where the whole message today is about solidarity and how that is actionable. So not statements, including land acknowledgements, but like, what are you doing for collective liberation? Not just for the liberation of BIPOC folks, but if you move about the world as a white person, your liberation is wrapped up in ours. Like, what are you doing for collective liberation? And then how are we continuing to share about Native Indigenous communities because they are still here? What are we willing to put on the line, again, for collective liberation? So I wanted to share that. And I also wanted just to share, I don't have the emotional labor acknowledgement in front of me. That's my bad. But I want to acknowledge that in conversations, especially around race, that there is disproportionate emotional labor that BIPOC folks hold in these conversations. And I want us to be in agreement in a mixed race space to hold the weight of that emotional labor together. It is all of ours to hold, and to acknowledge that we're going to do that as a community. So I wanted to kind of just start there. So a quick recap of this series. We have spent the last couple of months talking about the history of policing, the impact that is having on our current state, the disproportionate impact that is having on Black, Indigenous communities of color. We've talked about what holistic public safety means and what it can look like. When we talk about holistic public safety, Isaac Joy with DCRIM Seattle talks about that is about education. That's about access to healthcare. That's about healthy food. That is about housing. It's not just physical safety from violence. Maybe we'll say physical body violence, but there's also violence systems that include housing and healthcare. Like, what are we doing to create holistic public safety for our communities, for BIPOC communities? How are we decentering ourselves in those conversations if we are not part of those most impacted groups? And now we've kind of shifted to this last part of our series that is about actionable solidarity. How have we moved beyond making statements of solidarity, moving beyond a yard sign or a safety pin, or maybe the trans flag is in your window right now. Do you know any trans people? Well, besides me, do you know any trans people? Like, what are the ways in which your solidarity is actionable? How are we moving beyond that? What is our commitment to dismantling systems of oppression? How white supremacy culture shows up in ourselves, in our organizations, and throughout our environment? And what are we doing for that collective liberation? So I'm so honored to have the panelists that are here today. I'm so glad they said yes, because they are all incredible and extremely busy. I'm going to start us off by just mirroring what I hope each panelist will do. But my name's Alina Santillan. My pronouns are he, him. I am a light-skinned Latinx person. I'm wearing a red beanie. I have dark hair. I have a little peach fuzz mustache that I'm working on that will hopefully grow thicker, and a light gray tan cream sweatshirt against a blurred background. And I'm gonna popcorn it over to Nina if you are ready to go, and then you can popcorn it onto the other panelists.
Awesome. Good afternoon.
Will you also just provide a little bit of introduction about your work that you do with the description?
Good afternoon. My name is Nina Yarbrough. I use she, her pronouns. I am a fabulously plus size Black woman with sparkling gold eyes, purple lips, brown skin, curly black hair, in a plum blazer with a yellow top, and I am seated in my living room in front of a bookcase. And I am thrilled to be here. I am the business development manager for the Central District Forum for Arts and Ideas. I also do consulting with organizations around building anti-racist policy structures and generally how to be a healthy organization that centers BIPOC folks. I am also a writer, and my first book of poetry is coming out hopefully this month. And I am very excited about that and happy to be here. Alina is awesome. And there's some dope people on this panel. So I'm going to popcorn it to my pal, Vivian.
Thanks, Nina. Hi, I'm Vivian Hua. My Chinese name is Hua Ting Ting. She, they pronouns. I am the executive director of Northwest Film Forum. I'm also an Asian American human with hair tied back, long hair tied back, and a black sweatshirt because all I'm wearing is black these days. I got a background that is a photo of the film forum, but I'm not really standing in front of it, but the photo makes it seem like I'm standing in front of it. Let's see, what do I do? So I am a filmmaker and a writer. Like Nina, I have a project coming out soon at the end of the year, which is a metaphysical comedy. And at the Film Forum, I'm the first executive director of color at the Film Forum. We're constantly looking at what we're doing and trying to, as Lena said, dismantle oppressive systems as best as we can. And excited to be on this panel with a bunch of cool people. I'm gonna pass it over to Julia.
Hello, everybody. I'm very pleased to be here. I am a medium brown skinned woman with an afro that I've been working on for some time now. I'm seated in my home. The background is a very eclectic collection of colors and shapes and sizes, lamps and bookshelves. So I'm pleased to have everybody here with me in my living room. I'm wearing a patterned checkered cardigan because I never leave the house or without at least one pattern or a nice bright color on. So Vivian, I also have a closet full of dark and I'm actually planning on wearing something tomorrow. So we'll see. The reason why I'm excited to be here is because of everything Alina has said, particularly about solidarity and its role in advocacy and the work that we do as equity advocates, regardless of our position or title, field or sector. I have found the beautiful commonality in the intersections of our identities under the umbrella of equity. And using that as the basis for my new work, I founded the Equity Consortium, which serves a dual purpose, multiple purposes. One being a network of support for those who advocate for equity inside the organization and outside before we go home. So what that looks like is we have an organizational equity assessment, 162 question assessment that was written with over 600 years of community experience. And is also evaluated by multiple members of the community who we contract. So in this continual loop of gentle expression of power, we're experimenting and rebalancing power to the hands of those who are compassionate. And so our motto, our mission is simple. We're here to institutionalize equity. So for that, I'm very, very pleased to be here because this is our source of life. So thank you. And I will pass it to Sister Roxanne. I'm very pleased to have be in the same room with y'all. What an honor.
Inknash Waniksha, Roxanne White, Washnash Kanik, Yakima Ku, Nimipu, Ku, Nooksat Ku, Anani Grovant, Wichaishash, Co-Salish, Duwamish, Suquamish, Tulalip, Muckleshoot territory. What I just said was I introduced myself in my Sahaptin Yakima language. And I said that I am Yakima, Nez Perce, Nooksack, and Grovant Anani, and I presently reside here on Duwamish, Coast Salish, Muckleshoot, Suquamish, Tulalip territories. Raise my hands to the Coast Salish people here because I'm a guest here. I'm originally from east of the mountain, and I'm also from Montana and Idaho territories as well. And it is a great honor to be a part of this panel. Let's see, my background, I guess I would say that my work, I am a survivor first. I'm a survivor, well, actually, if I thought about it, I'm a mother and a grandmother, and of two beautiful grandsons, two beautiful sons. And I'm a survivor of human trafficking, sex trafficking, survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, and a childhood abduction. I'm also a family member, a direct family member that has been impacted by violence, meaning that more than 3 of my family members, women family members, have been murdered. One of my family members was missing for 297 days. Her name was Racinda Strong, and we're still fighting for justice, waiting for justice. And the work I do currently is anything, in the beginning it was environmental and it was native rights, environmental justice, and Creator had another plan, and because of my lived experience, I have been supporting other survivors and also advocating and supporting other families that are experiencing the same trauma and atrocities, because this is all related to colonial violence. This is all related to ongoing genocide and systemic oppression. And so this is the work that I do. And I don't financially get paid for it. I'm not part of any big org. I currently am supporting undocumented community at a frontline action hunger strike in front of Casa Latina. And I really just love the introduction about, what are we doing to, um, uh, what are we doing collectively to support, or I don't know if you were asking the community that, but I thought even me with, being Native American, I have a privilege. I'm here, and and um, and there are people that are undocumented that are very vulnerable, and so that's one way that I think that I could support as a Native woman to my fellow um, families, siblings of the Mexican, Indigenous, or Latinx communities. So, yep, that's me. Thank you very much. Oh, my background is my house. This is my apartment, and those red dresses signify, those are red silhouettes. Those signify missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Um, and as you know, I use the acronym MMIP for Missing and Murdered Indigenous People, and meaning that there's like not one of our relatives that I won't fight for or won't support their family, whether it's trans, two-spirit, um, whether it's male, female, non-binary, children, elders. I believe that everybody that has a missing or murdered relative deserves support.
Thank you for sharing that, Roxanne. Vivian, I wanted to make sure that Tanasha was also pinned on the screen since they'll be switching out interpreters, just so we have that on the recording and people can see that. There we go. All right, thank you. Thank you everybody for sharing your background, where you're coming from, your stories, your past, present, your legacy. And I, again, am just so honored to have each of you, to be in community with each of you and just share space. So thank you. I want to start off by maybe a simple question, but I think over the past year and a half, and especially over this last summer, that words like accountability, community, solidarity in particular have been thrown around a lot. Regardless of intention or unintentional action or lack of action, what I have heard and believe to my core is that solidarity demands action. We can't just speak statements of solidarity and there not be some kind of sacrifice or risk, vulnerability, community building. And I'm curious if each of you can share what does solidarity mean to you? And whoever wants to go first can go. Question: what does solidarity mean to you?
I'll go. I think that as an Indigenous woman, I've talked about this a lot. I've been very vocal about this on the front lines in activism and work that folks are doing out in, especially, just anybody. It started years ago, and I don't know, I don't want to really say names. How do I so there have been organizations that I've worked with that were non-BIPOC community, and then there have been like BIPOC community organizations. So it's just a little bit of everything, but and including myself. So there's been something that I noticed is, especially with the land acknowledgement. So I feel like I've been very vocal about that with a lot of organizers. I'm like, look, dude, I'm not here to do the land acknowledgement because I'm the native, because it was a little bit insulting. So to have me come and not be have a seat at the table to help organize, to be a voice in there, to have a choice or to really be a part of it, but then to call me last minute like my time isn't valuable and then ask me to do a land acknowledgement was just not okay. So that was one of the things that I've really been pushing for the past year since George Floyd, because there were a lot of new organizers and there was a lot of movement happening here in Seattle and across the world. So that was one of the things that I feel like I've been expressing throughout community and within my own community and just sharing with people. Also, I think I feel strongly about the illusion of inclusion. That is something that I learned from a non-BIPOC community. I don't think it's a cuss word to say white people. I'm gonna just say white people, because I always tell people that, like, is it a bad word? Because I mean, I don't think so. They call me, Native woman. I mean, I don't know, Anglo-Saxon, but white people. So I worked with an organization that was predominantly white women, and it was organized and created by white women. And for the first year I was kind of clueless, and I thought, oh cool, they're letting us lead the march, And then second year moving forward, it's like, okay, they're letting us do this again. And I started to really realize that, this was just kind of like a like giving you a pacifier, like here, just take this for right now, because we just want you guys to be happy. And if leading the march is all you want, then we'll give that to you, because we're running this. We're taking in the money, we're fundraising, we're like building, and we're just leading it. So I think, like, in terms of solidarity, like true solidarity, like true inclusion, it looks different than just because I started to ask for that spot. Like, I want to know where the main meetings are happening. I don't want to be a part of this little circle right here that you guys kind of put all the women of color in, and kind of like just let us talk and let us argue with each other for that spot in the front, but where is the core of this? And eventually I realized that I was never going to be a part of that core. They were never going to allow. So I denounced that, and called that out. Moving forward, like, in just little things that we do out here, and they're not little things, but in organizing, um, it is something that I believe that we're still learning. And so being very mindful of that, and being very intentional and loving, but vocal, as I work with, because there are a lot of young people, a lot of first generation that activists, like they're because of what happened on May 30th with George Floyd. We have a lot of people woke up, just like a lot of people woke up for Standing Rock. And so I think, like, the solidarity is when it's like that equity statement, when we all like kind of have like meet the person where they're at, but also like really being intentional and inclusive, and listening to each other. And this to me is solidarity. Also, solidarity is it looks like if I'm in solidarity with you, like, I'm a hand to you. How can I support? Like, I'm not going to come and tell you like what you're supposed to do, how you're supposed to do it. I'm not going to take charge. I'm not going to do certain things, but I'm going to help, like, with the stage. I'm going to create, like, I'm going to get a hammer and nails, and I'm going to do that kind of labor, because I'm in solidarity, right? I'm not going to speak for you or over you. Like, to me, that's solidarity as well. And it's really centering the voices of our brothers and sisters, our siblings that need that. And it's also like, it's also just like showing up. I mean, wow, I can say so much about this. I've been at Casa Latina for 4 or 5 days. And, you know, besides the ones that are doing the hunger strike, we have very little interaction, and it's kind of like that. Being a brown person, being a Native woman, it is very hard to get support, you know, within the community. You would think that because I'm Native American that I have all this visibility, but being Native American and being indigenous to this continent really just means that the erasure continues to happen systemically, first by this government and by this and by the government, and then, you know, by the rest of the world. It's like being Native and being brown is a continuous fighting for visibility. And so, you know, I think solidarity looks different to each person. I think to each person that has that is in this community, whether you're BIPOC, trans, two spirit. I notice in the work that I do that everybody has a different thing that they need, that they are seeking, and that we need to hear them. And we need to listen to each other and learn what that means to each person in each community. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that, Roxanne. Powerful. I just want to, like, if I'm in solidarity with you, I'm a hand to you. How do I support you? I'm not going to speak over you. I'm going to center your voice. It's showing up. These are all elements of solidarity. It is like decentering ourselves. And then, like, how do you need support? You need me to build the stage? You need me to paint the sign? You need me to hold my bike on the sideline at a march, like blocking the entryway? What, like, how do you need support? What are the ways in which you need that? Julia, Nina, Vivian, who wants to go next and sharing that same thing?
Sure. Roxanne, I will just echo a lot of what you said. Like, and Alina, you just said it too. It's about decentering yourself from the needs of the person most impacted by whatever is happening. And I had to look, like, I know what solidarity means, but I'm also like, I love like definitions and stuff. So I looked it up, and one of the synonyms is harmony, right? If I'm in harmony with you, that means I am actively doing the work with you, right? You can't be in harmony with somebody and your mouth is shut, right? So the idea, when I think of solidarity, especially in my realm, so I work in the arts and cultural field. That's my background. I've worked for theater companies. I've worked for Seattle Opera, large, small. I currently work at a Black-run, Black-led arts organization. And the way that I feel solidarity within that organization amongst my people is very different than the kind of solidarity that happens with other non-Black people of color, and what I expect solidarity to look like with white people. Like, the expectations are different. And I am learning more and more that that's okay. Like, for me, solidarity with my non-Black family members who are melanated, people of the global majority, a lot of it looks like me educating myself. Right. One of my big lessons that I've learned recently, I had a good friend who was patient enough to talk to me around what it means to be Pacifica, and the fact that Pacifica people are Indigenous, and learning that a lot of times erasure that happens with Pacifica people is that it gets conflated with the Asian American experience, and it's different experiences. But because of how white supremacy works, you would see it on the checkbox. It was like, are you Asian or Pacific Islander? Sometimes you see Native Hawaiian. So for me, my solidarity with my other melanated folks is around educating myself around what their cultural experiences are. It's around me opening myself up to what does Indigenous wisdom look like, right? It's around me understanding, like, how do I show up for my people? Like, period. Like, what do you need? Do you need money? Do you need me to help you to build something? When it comes to white folks, my expectation is that it's money first, then it's your quiet support, and then it's you locking arms and willing to sacrifice something. I think you said that earlier, is that like oftentimes people don't understand that when you say you stand in solidarity, like that's an act, that's a verb, right? Like that's actionable. Like you can't be actionable sitting behind your computer screen and then just liking all like BLM and hashtag stop Asian hate, but you have done nothing in your personal life to actually affect that change, right? If you can sit down at your dinner table, and I know this is very, like, we're in a pandemic, the panini press is real, but if you can't get on a Zoom call in your personal life and have more than one brown person, that's a problem. Like if you look in your list of contacts and you can't tell me at least 5 brown people that you know in the Pacific Northwest, if you don't know 5 Asian people, if you don't know 5 Latinx people, there is a problem. Like that's not solidarity. That tells me that you have been able to construct your life in such a way that you get to avoid people that outnumber you. That is white supremacy, and that is not solidarity. For me as a Black person, what solidarity means is that when my trans family are going through stuff, it means that I open my wallet and I support and I give to campaigns that are helping to support the trans community. It means that I get to know more people like Roxanne White, and I learn about the fact that there are hundreds of missing and murdered Indigenous people, because that's information that the media doesn't want you to hear about. And because I am subject to consuming my media like a lot of other folks, I don't hear about it. So my solidarity as a Black bodied person involves a lot of uncoupling of white supremacy so that I can show up for my people, if that makes sense. And then when I think about white solidarity, what that means, it means that you have to now risk something. You have to risk your safety, your comfort, and your financial security so that you can help to dismantle a system that you directly benefit from every day. No, you did not enslave my ancestors. No, you were not the reason why Roxanne's people were removed from their homelands, but you directly benefit from the financial systems and institutions that allow you to be who you are. Your parents did it, and so did your grandparents. So that is what solidarity means to me. Like I have a lot of learning to do, and it's going to be a lifetime of learning. And one of the lessons that I have learned from you, Alina, is realizing that I'm going to cause harm. Like that's for and then me being willing to acknowledge that and take a time to pause and learn and be like, okay, that happened. How do I move on from this? Because I'm not a protester. I'm not a marcher because I'm asthmatic and I don't like a lot of people, but I'm someone who's been fortunate to start to make a good chunk of money. I'm a good writer and I can show up when my people ask me to be there. So I will use my cross sections of privilege to help my people. And then I will use my very fun, welcoming personality to get in front of the faces of white people and hold them accountable in a way that other people may not be able to do. So for me, that is how my solidarity shows up.
That was powerful, Nina. Thank you for sharing that and speaking truth to power. I've asked all the panelists to not hold back and to show up exactly who they are, because there's so many times where BIPOC folks in particular are asked to leave part of themselves at the door, or trans folks or women. Like, what are the ways in which you're asked to leave a part of yourself at the door for survival, for the comfort of the white supremacy culture in which we exist in? And like, that ain't happening today on the Zoom call. So I've asked them all to show up authentically, fully themselves. Thank you for your vulnerability.
Right there.
What'd you say, Roxanne?
That's a whole nother panel. What we're asked to leave at the door, our strength. I mean, come on, we could keep going. I mean, I know many of us have dealt with that.
All right, Roxanne just created another panel, so expect to see probably this whole panel again on a whole nother topic. I'm excited to unpack. Julia, Vivian, who wants to go next?
I can go. I mean, honestly, I feel like I don't really need to add anything, but I will just because this is the prompt. So I feel like for me, the words that kept bringing in my mind are both Nina and Roxanne both covered, which is showing up. I think showing up is like the most basic thing, and showing up is offering whatever gifts and privileges you have towards whatever cause you're trying to support in a way that is felt and seen to the people who need to be supported. And I don't mean like felt and seen as in like cool social media posturing, but like felt as in like really felt, like they feel like you're there for them. They see that you're there for them and that you are reliable. And I think it's really important to stress that like showing up, like Roxanne said, for different people is different in different ways. Like Nina, I'm not about frontline protesting, like occasionally, but that's like not where I think my skills are best suited. So I'm not going to show up there every day, but I might like help organize stuff behind the scenes and get things to the frontline protesters, or do social media stuff or do writing stuff. So I think it's really important that we recognize and educate ourselves on like the needs that are there and then how we can use our skills towards it. That's it. That's all I got.
Thank you, Vivian. Yeah, like what are the skills in which, what are ways we can decenter ourselves, and then what are the skills that we have that like there's a space and need for all of us. Like we have something that we can offer, and maybe it's not like on the very front lines, or maybe that's not our place, is not on the front line. So like kind of to everybody's point, like what are the ways that we support the movement, right? Julia, last but not least, my friend. Don't be nervous. You're always spitting wisdom all the time. Don't.
You know what? It's just such a privilege to be able to listen. I just want to take a moment and really appreciate the time and space that we have to listen to each other, because I take from our traditions of sitting in circle, right? Our ancestors, all of our ancestors, we all go back far enough, you know. What did we do? We sit in circle, you know. Why? Because we have to solve very complex problems, and these things take time. And I very much appreciate the time that has been given without having to be taken from us, you know. So I appreciate this very much, because I'm learning and listening as well. And this question of solidarity, I have been thinking about it, because Alina, you emailed. I was thinking I had time to think about this, and what does it mean in terms of like my purpose in life. And that was actually a big chunk of my answer was, there is no life without solidarity. Like the illusion of it being absent, of something affecting me and it not affecting you, you know, that is an illusion. You know, we have been duped, bamboozled into believing that we're separated in the first place. You know, without connection, that without the ability to express love and joy and pain and sorrow, like pain becomes trauma when it's shared, because when it's shared, we can do something about it, right? And so it's like all life is in solidarity. We just have to appreciate and understand it, acknowledge those specific threads on how exactly we're connected to each other. And at the end of every story I get to, it's like, that's the end of the story. That's the reality that I keep coming to, is that we are all still very connected. And this whole color coding system, I'm so over it. We've been talking, I've been listening to, we mentioned like people who were in solidarity with like other groups that might not look like us or have the same body type or whatever it is that we're born with, how we are connected to this person. If this person is crying, they're a human being. We're physically, genetically wired to feel each other's pain. It is only through this deep, destructive practice of cutting ourselves off from our most beautiful nature that we have problems like racism and sexism and all these other things. But honestly, it's us remembering. It's us pausing like this long enough to feel something. And this last year has given humanity on the global scale the most beautiful opportunity to pause long enough to feel something. And this is why we saw what we did last year, and we're continuing to see, because we've been awoken. Because we've had rest. It's like, yes, we have to awake, but we had to rest first. I before this pandemic, before we're all in lockdown, I've sat in circles and I've asked circles of women just like this, what would it be like to be free? Like, honestly, like we know what it's like to feel pain. I can literally pinpoint down to the hair follicle where it is that, like, which hair is being pulled out. It's not honestly that complicated to point to pain. What is way more complicated is to point to what it is that I want. And to do that, I cannot be selfish. It requires, what do we want? What do we need? You know, and so, like, solidarity is lifeblood. It is everything. It is the ultimate answer to all of the scenarios in which I find myself having to confront evil. I don't know, like I had this whole process this last summer of trying to understand what it is that we're doing wrong, like what it is that we've been keep trying to do for decades now with workshops and trainings. And I mean, I'm so intellectualized at this point. We have, like, Google it should be the answer to practically any DEI question. You know, like, there's a workshop, there's a book, there's an article, there's, you know, watch a YouTube video, like it's out there. It's like, I don't know what else to add to that body of work. It is a field of study. How come we're still not being believed? When we go into the organization, and I have all of this behind me, I have facts, I have data, I've got this, I've got my own lived experience, I've got a personal narrative, I'm telling you to your face, this is my reality, and it's still rejected. Why does this keep happening? And you know what the answer is? Solidarity. Is because I'm lacking it. Who in their right, what general in their right mind sends one soldier out to the battlefield at a time? We don't do that. We're at war right now against evil, right? Who does this? We just come back harmed. We come back dead. And dead. Why do we keep doing this to ourselves? There's something wrong with my strategy at this point. Solidarity. What am I missing? I'm missing solidarity. How many times are we the only person in that room? The only person willing to stand up and say that thing. The only person who has to take that home with us and internalize it and figure out if it's our fault by ourselves. You see how many points in that little narrative, just right there. Alone, 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 alone. That's our Achilles heel right there. That divide and conquer business. That persistence in the narrative that we are divided. No, that's not where we're starting. We started being in connection, in community with each other. We were taught to not do that. So we already have the ancestral knowledge in our blood, in our DNA, what it feels like to be human with each other. So I'm Solidarity's life. It is the answer to all of my woes, every single one of them. Like, Vivian, I've seen you on the street. I met you last summer. That's why you like, so when I hear you, like I get to remember you in this way and hear you again and connect with you like this. Roxanne, I saw you in the parking lot at 206 Zulu Washington Hall last time when we were standing out building. Oh, Nina, I just know you through like reputation, like, oh my God, like I'm just like, whoa, Nina's here. It's like that, y'all. And it's like, that's what that means to me, is that we remember each other, that we treat each other like family, because we have way more in common with our stories and our emotions, and having lived through things and having the knowledge. and the gift of leadership, because we are trusted by others to tell the truth. And I don't find any surprise at all that all four of us right here, we have at least one thing in common. You know, we're women like this. And I feel like that is not an accident, you know. There is a way in solidarity where we share what is needed. We push to the front who is needed to lead us in this moment. We need you to answer. We need you to answer this complicated question, because we fucked it up. I don't have it. So like, why am I depending on men? Like, why am I depending on the patriarchy? Why am I depending on all these tools that they have used? So my contribution to solidarity is an invitation to take risk, to try something else. You know, slow down. Let women talk. You know, make room for women to lead. Make it easy for them to lead. Listen. You know, listen to those who have been hurt the most, because they understand what it means to feel pain and are therefore more likely to not inflict it on others. So for me, my work is this rebalancing of power, and who to rebalance it to. We have to know each other, to know who to push forward and say, now you lead us, because this is the question today. And when it's my turn, you will be there for me. That's what it's about. You know, it's about this social contract we have, this transactional nature of, if I give you something, then you are going to give me something. That's doesn't work in my scenario. It doesn't work in my life. So I say, I'm going to give the world this thing. And the world is going to give me something when I need it. This equity. You know, so I'm very pleased to be here. I'm so happy I had a chance to get this out of my head, because you know that prompt was beautiful, and so was listening to these phenomenal human beings. Like I'm inspired and rejuvenated. So I appreciate this time and space. And Alina, back to you.
Yeah, now I gotta come up with another good question to, like, geez, thank you, each of
Can I
you.
just give you props real quick? This is like riveting.
Like, I'm in a master class, like, Julia, like, Google it, like, the number of times that I've actually, like, when somebody has asked me what is genuinely, I'm just like, go and figure it out. I did. I had to go get degrees and spend a lot of time. Like, you can do it too. We live in the 21st century. Technology is literally in your pocket. You got a supercomputer in your pocket. Don't ask me. Don't ask any of us.
Well, just talking about that emotional labor, I've had so many white women inbox me or pull me aside after an event or during an event, and first want to hug me and tell me they're sorry, which I really don't like. I'm so not about that. But the other thing is like the inboxes or the emails on, could you please tell me what MMIW means and how can I help and all this other stuff. And I do say that. I'm like, Google it. So that was perfect. I'm like, you know, you just Google MMIWG, like even just MMIW, and you're going to find out like so much. And definitely, I love that statement. But the other thing was that you said that was so profound was when you were talking about, oh my God, it was at the, you said something about women, God, it was the thing I forgot now, but I was gonna message inside of it and I was gonna be like, oh my God, that was so powerful because as women, you were talking about us being the only women like in a space, right? Or like, and being the only one. And I was thinking about how that has happened many times, but I was also thinking, and I don't want to put Alina on the spot, but I've been really working on pronouns and being really intentional and mindful, because I have so many friends, so many siblings that are like, I am they or them. And that is, for my generation, I'm so not used to that, right? Like my generation is way like everybody's a she or a her or him, or, you know, but really just like in hearing from community of they, them. They don't use she, her. And, you know, and just really just like being mindful. And as we were all talking, I was looking at everybody's pronouns, because that's the intentional piece that I'm putting in, like with my community. And I said, oh, Alina, he, him, they. And I'm like, okay, or I don't know if it's they or if it's just he, him. Correct me, please.
He, him. I put he, him,
Him.
and L for Spanish, but yeah. Him.
Okay, Spanish. Okay, so see there, I mean, that is just something that I'm working on. You know, that's my thing right now. It's just really paying attention to. I think it's a beautiful thing that people get to today, like be freely out here and just say who they are and how they want to be acknowledged in this world.
Yeah, and I feel like there's, you know, I feel like at least the 5 of us, I feel like we have organized in ways that we didn't even realize that we were connected, or like, you know, Roxanne, I don't know if you know this, but when you were going to Harborview a while back, like that was a connection that I made with Rachel, who reached out to you and Ixley and provided community for like folks like that. And like we hadn't even met yet. And still, like, because of intentional relationship building, I even had the opportunity to click like, well, I know this Indigenous person, and this person that I don't know, like this young person I don't know that needs support. I know of community folks that I have relationships with that can show up in this way that I can't show up for this young person because I don't have that identity, but I know I can use the connection or access to power that I have to connect people to. And same thing with Vivian and Julia and Nina, like the ways in which we organize together, the ways in which we can share space together, and what we are willing to risk, even when it costs us more to risk something for each other. And I think that willingness to risk something or sacrifice or move through discomfort and prioritize the safety of our BIPOC colleagues or our trans folks who are differently abled, like what are the ways in which we are advocating for, kind of to Julia's point, listen to the people who are hurt the most. Like they know what they need. Like what are the ways in which we insert ourselves into this like positional power of like, I know what's best for you, rather than like, tell me what you need.
Yeah.
Julia.
Alina, can I share something? I wanted to share a piece of our research. So we have this assessment I mentioned in my introduction, but the question arose as to how will this thing be evaluated? So here's a list of 162 statements that we as organizing people, as people advocates of equity, we like. It's just like, I like it when this happens. I like it when that happens, like this, right? So how are we going to evaluate this thing was the next question. And so what we did was we didn't have an answer for almost a year. We're just like, I'm not even going to touch it. I have no idea. It's going to come. We're going to figure it out. And one day I had a conversation with a colleague, Christina Obey-Sumner. She's a disability justice advocate, right? And she's like, oh, Julia, we have organizing principles. They're beautiful. You should look at them, right? So she sent me this list of organizing principles. And they are the most simple thing. They're just literally like just a couple words on each one, right? And the first one was intersectionality, right? And representation. And so this got me thinking, and she's like, you know what? We're probably not the only one who's got organizing principles out there. So we're like, oh, that's it. There's a clue. Let's follow to see where it goes. So I have 2 of my colleagues. We spent 2 months on it, Googling it. literally Googling it, organizing principles, equity organizing principles, and we tried to find as many communities as we could possibly find. We found, just within that short time and having to do a lot of other things, over 3 dozen. And you can, disability justice, Black Lives Matter, all the local organizations, national, we focused on local, but we had some national, like, so all the way down to like farm workers' rights in Southern California, like, how do they like to work? What do they find is important? And how do they like to be together? How do they organize it according to their humanity? Yeah. And we put, got goosebumps. I just love this story so much. we took all of their principles and each one of them got a box, right? So we put it in a spreadsheet. You cannot print this thing. It's the most beautiful and ugly printing thing you've ever seen. It's like you're looking at this document. We've all been in these meetings, making our principle, like all of those hundreds of thousands of hours of intentional thought and process of how we like to be together, how we need to be together. And it's like there in one place. Like, I get so emotional because there's hundreds of like basements and boardrooms and like bedrooms, and like there's probably 1 million hours worth of thought and humanity in this Google document, spreadsheet, So we said, okay, now how is it singing? You talk about harmony. I thought about this because that's what it felt like when we were looking at this, trying to find the harmony. Where's the chorus? What is it singing? What is this? What does this all mean? How are we all saying the same thing in different ways? What is the thing we're saying? And we needed to make it as simple as possible because we have to share this work with evaluators. We're contracting out, asking them for their time. We don't want them to have to go through this document every time they're looking at. So we have to do that work, And it came out as much easier actually than you would ever imagine. It was actually not that hard. It took a week, and that's just logistics. It took me an hour to find to put my there's four evaluation matrices, and the first one is representation. And this is why I'm telling you this whole long story, is because the most common organizing principle in all of these, throughout all of these communities, was representation by those most affected. It is that important to us that we represent ourselves in our own destiny. Yeah. The most, I'd say like 80% of them had this, right? The second most common thing was intersectionality. Are you understanding the intersectionality of my own identity? Are you understanding the intersectionality of my own reality, right? I'm a woman, I'm Black, I'm Muslim, and I'm left-handed, whatever. But we have this wholeness to us. Can you see the wholeness of me? So these check boxes you were talking about as well, very painful experience for us who have to fill it out. So whose work are we assigning this to? So you want to hear the 4 categories? I don't know, you have time? Okay. the 4 categories. Representation. Those most basic, like who is in what position, but it also means who's at the table making decisions. Are you inviting your constituents? Are you inviting those who are most affected by your mission statement? The second category is economy. How is the organization interacting with money? Are they understanding their fiscal responsibility? Are they treating their budget as a moral document? Do they see that? Are they paying their constituents for their narratives at their fundraisers? I love this is on the assessment. I wanted to ask this question. So the third category is culture. I love this category because this is our way of people who are not down with the dominant white culture to say, I value and appreciate and learn through experience. What does it feel like to work here? What does it feel like to be in this space? And we can quantify that now, question by question by question, you see. So we're quantifying the qualitative. Finally, I'm validated in my feelings. The fourth category is systems. How does this organization understand and appreciate its positionality in relation to other systems, right? Is it reaching out to people in or organizations in its sector, cross field? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it going in? Is it going out? Does it understand that it is a part of this natural world that has a mother? Is it respecting its mother like this? So that's it. all of those. There's probably I can't even. I could do them. Probably 10,000 maybe organizing principles, and they all fit in one way or another into one of those four categories. But the one most important, the reason why again I bring this up, representation by those most affected. And I'll tell you that. And a lot of the DEI work I've done for over a decade now, and has been going on well before I was even born. It seems to me at the end of the day, like I just gotta throw up my hands and say, like, what is the point of all of this? Is to keep the white people in their jobs. It's like, I'm teaching you how to reach out to the community. I'm teaching you how to be culturally responsible. I'm teaching you how to do this and that and the other thing. But what's the number one important thing? Representation by those most affected. So what is the point of what I'm doing? And I'm trying to keep this person in their job by bringing them to the future with us, And I'm love the way that this thought process has manifested in my work, because now we have this assessment to say this is what the community of over almost 600 years experience say. How are you doing compared to this? And the most loving and compassionate way, because again, like in my introduction, I say we're rebalancing power into the hands of those who are compassionate. So it's an assessment, but it's also a guide, because that's how we do it. We don't just blah, 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 and then walk away. That's not how we do it. We stick around. We make sure that you're good. You know what I mean? That's what we do. That's what we've been doing this whole time. But now we have the actual power to do something about it. So because we're not alone. Solidarity.
Bringing it back.
That's right.
Julia, thank you for sharing that assessment and like those principles of organizing. And Roxanne, I know you had your hand up and I know you have to leave early, so I wanted to pass it to you and then let Vivian and Nina, I have another question I kind of want you to lead off of, but Roxanne, please share.
Well, thank you for that. And I do remember, Julia, once you started sharing, I was like, oh yeah, because you're kind of poetic when you talk, you're like, you're very poetic in your words, and I feel like I should be in a lounge with like a black and white striped shirt, smoke filled, snapping my hands. But yeah, I love everything you said. But what I wanted to talk about was, oh God. So there's this, so there's something that I feel like we're missing, or maybe like I could add to this is, solidarity is one thing, but harmony is another. And I really like that definition that you pulled up in regards to solidarity, because being a woman of color and being in community, oftentimes I've experienced division, like not togetherness, I mean, and oftentimes like in this world today, like everybody that I've come across is like for instance, like decolonizing. Like my people, we don't want to be like the colonizers. In fact, that's why we say decolonize. We don't want to like have this like this structure that they've built, and that the way that this world is going right now, the way that this world, America, is thriving, it is thriving off of the off of the abuse and the ultimate, loss of water, loss of a loss of environmental air, trees, all these things that we need. And so decolonizing, and as you were talking, I was like, wow, this is so powerful, because we don't often like really come into a space together as BIPOC women, and really just have like this beautiful intentional conversation. And I feel really grateful to be a part of it. I feel I like this is something that I don't get to do often, but also like as I'm getting ready to leave and go over to the action, I just want to say that each and every one of you can do something for this community today. Is maybe just, if you're on Instagram, and you could either follow me, or I think it's called let's see, this group is called Seattle, no, Youth Voices for Justice. No, that's not them. That's not them. There's so many of them. Can't even think of it. Oh, yeah, it is Youth Voices for Justice. And so there's them, and there's like I've been sharing all the information, but it's just like, if I could ask anybody anything today, is to come down and see us, come down and spend some time with these community members that are on a hunger strike for justice. And like, I'm just really grateful to be here. Thank you very much. I think I lost my train of thought in listening. If I sound like I'm rambling, it's because I was trying to remember what it was that it was good, because you said so many things. I should have been taking notes, but I'm not a note taker. So thank you very much. And I do have to get out because they're waiting for me. Thank you so much.
Roxanne, thank you for being here. So grateful. I shared that information in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
We'll connect soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye, Roxanne. That's what organizing looks like. That's what solidarity looks like. Okay, I'll show up for this panel and be in a space with like other BIPOC folks to talk about what solidarity looks like, and then I'm gonna go put it into action. Like, I gotta go right now, actually, to go and to do that, right? And Roxanne doesn't get paid for that. Like, I think Roxanne is, like most of us just here in this room, understand that my liberation is wrapped up with my Latinx folks. As an Indigenous person, as a Native person, my liberation is connected to them. Right? If you don't know about the hunger strike going on, like, learn about that. I dropped the links in the Instagram, so you can check that out. I wanted to, the other kind of question that kind of is like perfectly set up for this is, what does it look like to work towards collective liberation? Like with communities that, I don't identify as Black or as Asian American. So what are my ways of like building solidarity with your communities, Vivian and Julia and Nina, your communities? Like, what does it look like to work towards collective liberation? What is a part of that work?
I think what comes to mind is the idea that we have to acknowledge that our liberation is tied together. In the workshop I was in prior to this, someone was able to talk about and share kind of a similar situation where it was finding solidarity within their community, and then which was non-Black, and then talking about sort of the disconnect that they experience as a non-Black person of color with Black folks. But they were able to recognize that, oh, I see both sides of this. Our liberation is tied together, right? So that's one of the first things. When I think about the Black community specifically, I almost hesitate because my like it's such a vast experience, like, and and it's, I think it's true for any of our cultural backgrounds. The way that I move through life and experience as like a Black Ohio transplant in the Pacific Northwest is going to be different than the Black like my counterpart that is born and raised like in the Central District or who grew up in the South End and is dealing with like what life in the Pacific Northwest is. But my general first thought, I always go to economic justice. Probably because my background is fundraising. So I think about, how are you supporting those communities? Like, are you supporting the businesses within those communities? Are you ensuring that like the wealth can be generated within those, within the Black community specifically? Like the Tulsa riots have been popping up a lot in the past like couple years. I think is in particular after the murder of George Floyd, and just there were a lot of, and the anniversary of the Tulsa massacre was I think was like 2 years ago, because it was or what is time anymore, but it been recently making like a huge resurgence. And one of the things that people didn't realize is that like so much of like all of that hatred and vitriol that generated the Tulsa massacre and other like mass lynchings were direct response to Black prosperity. If you look at what happened to you could even say there's a lot of people who will talk about how the internment of Japanese Americans was not only motivated by like really just shitty like government like decisions, but it was economically motivated. So many Japanese Americans in the Pacific Northwest, in the West Coast, were wealthy and thriving and had vibrant communities. When they were interred, their property was taken, right? You had an entire generation of family that had wealth snatched away from them. And I'm not talking about Vanderbilt wealth. I'm talking about the sustainable generational wealth that keeps a community vibrant and alive, right? And so when I think about somebody has their sound on and it is real difficult. Let's go on silent, people. But yeah, so when I think about like how do we move towards I think about like where are your dollars going in relationship to the community you're trying to build solidarity with. Like for me, because I'm fortunate to work for a Black arts and cultural organization, we work with a majority of Black vendors, right? And I know some people will say, well, why do you always make it about money? There's more to it. It's like, we live in a capitalist society. Like, I cannot undo the economic structure that we live in. Also, because of the same structure, my ancestors were kidnapped, murdered, mutilated, and this country prospered. Because of that economic structure, Roxanne's ancestors were mutilated and decimated and moved to all sorts of places in this country, right? So this is the system that we live in. So if I think about like healing and prosperity, for me, it starts with economic revitalization. It starts with keeping wealth shifting and moving in the community so that there isn't the dependence on the systems that white supremacy is holding up. Like if I think about the nonprofit sector itself, the nonprofit structure in the United States was specifically established because government failed to provide particular services. You want to know who began a lot of the nonprofits in this country? A lot of wealthy white women in the early 1900s and late 1800s who didn't have anything to do and they needed to do something to deal with their husbands. If you look at most American art organizations, whether they were opera houses, ballets, theater companies, primarily started by wealthy white women. So we literally have a system that is set up that like the nonprofit structure in this country is set up so that it's meant to help poor, downtrodden Black and brown folks. So that's the system. So if we can have a counter narrative where instead of us depending on white charity, we actually have thriving Black businesses. We have various, like, what would it look like if Latinx and Indigenous communities were able to keep money and wealth and have strong school systems and like a really tight social fabric? Like, so that to me, so I tend to go towards the money thing because that's my world. Like I deal with wealth a lot in my day to day. And when I think about within BIPOC community, it's recognizing that Vivian and I, our stories are tied together, right? We may have eaten different food growing up, but we both had probably a bunch of older women yelling at us for running in and out of the house and letting the air go out, right? Like our stories are connected. And Julia, I think about that beautiful analogy you said about the general, right? Like nobody sends people out into this world alone. So the more community we're able to build together, I feel like that's how we're ultimately going to create healing. A lot of the social issues that we face with homelessness, with the wealth gap that is very apparent in our part of the country, like if we're able to support the communities that are struggling the most, then it will lead to greater healing. And obviously investing in things like mental health care. Like, why is it that BIPOC folks are least likely to be have mental health issues diagnosed and treated than our white counterparts? So that was a lot, but that's where my brain is like, where are you spending your money? How are you investing in these communities? And also, who is in your phone? That, like, again, like, if you can't get on a phone call with, like, I'll give you three individuals of color from a community you say you're in solidarity with. If you can't do that, and you can't include Alina, Vivian, Nina, Julia, or Roxanne on that phone call, like, and the ASL interpreters, either, these lovely human beings, like, if you can't do that, then that is the source of your problem. Who do you know? Who are you eating with? Who are you laughing with? Who that's what when I think about healing and solidarity.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that and ending on that point. Yeah, not just people that you work with, but like people you are in a relationship with. Like, I know that I can reach out to any of these panelists if I'm struggling, I have a hard time. Like, I know Julia's kids' names. I know that Nina spent time in Ohio, like, can't wait to snuggle her mama, even though her mama's like not a lovey-dovey super person, but Nina's gonna force her to snuggle. Like what are these things that you know about people, not just like, I see you out on the street and like, I support you. Like who do you know? Who do you have authentic relationships with? Vivian, I wonder if you could speak to that too. Like, what would it look like to work towards collective liberation and healing?
Yeah, there's a big bucket. So I'm just going to name a few things. I think Nina touched upon it a lot, understanding that our struggles are different within each of these subcategories of racial like separation, but that each group is being honest when they say what their struggles are and what their needs are, and to listen to that, even if it's not your struggle, and then to support it nonetheless, if that makes sense. And I think just constantly educating ourselves as to these differences, not only in the broader group, but in like the subcategories of like, not all Black people are the same. There's immigrants, there's African Americans, not all Asian people are the same. Every freaking ethnicity is like super different in terms of their, political or like social standing within American society. And to honor that with the work that you do when you're working with them. To the money point, I also, this is constantly the conversation. So Nina has the honor of working with like a all Black organization. And I think often about, I'm sure Julia thinks about this all the time, but like, do we need to fix some of these institutions that are like, do BIPOC people need to put in the labor to fix some of these white-led organizations that have been around forever and maybe are even, being told kindly by BIPOC community what they should be doing to change, but just not listening. They're not doing the Googling. They're not doing the listening, even when people are telling them. So often lately, I've been thinking about healing as a means of not working with some of those organizations sometimes, because often when you're just working with BIPOC groups who are on the same page as you, there's so much less translation work that needs to happen. It doesn't feel like it's pushing a boulder up the hill. It feels like it's just like smooth sailing. So that I think is really crucial. I have found to my own healing. I feel like being in spaces like this are like empowering versus like afterwards I need to go take a nap. And I also think about, white foundations that I hear about who dissolve themselves and then give their money to BIPOC organizations, or I've heard about like white people who felt guilty about learning that, their ancestors were slave owners and giving away huge amounts of their wealth. Like, do that. Build up the BIPOC communities that you say you want to serve through structural change, right? That's money, but that's also just structure in terms of like moving yourself out of the way if you are in a leadership position and putting people in positions of power, because that's super necessary. Not that all BIPOC people in positions of power are necessarily always, having that community's best interest in mind, but often it is very helpful. And then the last thing I want to just bring up really quickly is I just lately have been thinking about nature and our connection to nature so much, and how colonization not only oppresses people, but it oppresses and deprioritizes nature, and that's all connected. Like the fact that we don't care about nature as a society, I think also translates to us not caring as much about human beings. So yeah.
Alina, can I add?
Yeah.
It just made me think of, I feel like too, for like, oftentimes when white people hear us have these conversations, all they hear and they see is like, oh my God, you want to tear it all down, and you want to you want to just destroy us, and we're going to be on the bottom. And it's just like, it's really funny that that's your reaction. And I cannot remember her name, but she got filmed. She did this beautiful, just off the cuff and like interpretation of like somebody was interviewing her. And I think it was like right after the murder of George Floyd. She was like, she's a Black like educator. And she was just very impassioned. And somebody was asking her, like, why are people looting and rioting? And her response always sticks with me. And she was like, be grateful that what Black people and other people of color want is justice and not revenge. Because if we did, this country would have been to smoke and rubble a long time ago. Like, we are not asking for you to give up who you are. We are asking that you recognize the centuries of just horror and trauma that has been inflicted on a lot of people, and the fact that whether you were the direct cause or not, you benefit. So for your own sake and the sake of your kids and for every other white person out there, isn't it better to create a world and an environment where we all prosper together? And to do that, repair has to happen. In order to heal something, you have to acknowledge the harm that was caused. And that is going to involve reparations. And that's just not financial reparations. That is a deep acknowledgement. And to Vivian's point, how do you undo the systemic and structural things that are in place that continue to keep Black, Indigenous, and anybody who's basically not a cisgendered white man, straight white man. Like, I know it's pretty cliche in a very liberal space to be like, oh, you're bashing like cisgender straight white guys. Like, no, it is historically accurate that those have been the people for whom systems have been supporting and who they're being uplifted for. So it is not, and especially the idea of like some of these institutions, you need to just let them go. It's like, they've been allowed to fail upwards for a really long time. There are a couple of arts organizations in this city that I could name, but I'm a polite person, have been allowed to fail upwards for a long time. But if you are Black, if you are an Asian organization, if you are Indigenous, Lord forbid that you produce a budget that isn't spotless for these foundations. Lord forbid that you end up having some internal issues, which is commonplace in a business. You are never permitted to fail, period. And I think that is like having a space where we can all collectively grow and learn from mistakes is something that is going to be vital when it comes to healing. And that is going to mean that some of these old, big, primarily white organizations across sectors are going to have to sunset because you've had your time and now your time is no more. There are other things that can grow where you once were, And there are other opportunities for different people who are more innovative, that are vibrant, and that could help build a better, more sustainable future. It doesn't mean that nobody loves you. It doesn't mean that you're no longer valuable, but it means that you've had your time and now it's time for something different.
For sharing that, Dina. Yeah, I mean, like at some point, even for me, at some point, Seattle Arts and Culture for Anti-Racism, like it will be time for someone else to lead, and it won't be me, and that's okay. And it's supposed to work that way. There are perspectives and things I don't have that the community that is a part of SACA will benefit from other leadership. And hopefully I have the insight, and I know I have community to be like, yo, it's been 20 years, it's time to go. I'm not gonna be here for 20 years, I'm kidding. But that people will be like, yo, it's time to go. It's time to transition to something else. Like, and allow other people to lead. So yeah, I wanted to kind of end with you, and then we'll go into the breakout rooms. But I just wanted to give you a word on like collective liberation and healing. And then we'll go into breakout rooms in about 5 minutes.
To end on the word healing, what a blessing, because like that's something I need to remind myself continually and in perpetuity, is to make time and space for healing. And Vivian, I very much appreciate you reminding me of that responsibility to myself, to not have to subject myself, right, to places that are harmful, that I've already reached the dead end. I know I can't keep beating this dead horse by myself. I don't have to anymore. And that I'm just so inspired by conversations I've had, and disgusted by ones I've had in the past, like very recently, literally going over a line item, right, on a settlement demand, the settlement recommendation, a line item that says harm to an unprotected Black woman, and it had a dollar amount, $2,000, because that's what it was worth to her. She says, I would feel right if I had this, right? That's her healing, saying this is how I will liberate myself from this harm and be again my whole self, right? This is her amount. And in comparison, I thought it was very generous of her. Like I was very surprised. She was being very generous compared to the harm that she experienced. I'm debating. I'm in a conversation debating, not the amount. I'm debating whether or not it should even be there. Like, what the actual F? And you know what I hear? This is the reasoning behind it. And this is a person who, you know, touchy-feely kind of like this. Not a mean person, right? This person saying, I can't put a dollar amount on emotions. I mean, it makes sense, because her pain, there's no dollar amount on it, right? There's no way to actually literally physically calculate the damage done to, you know, the transmission and the brake pads. Like there's no itemized report like this, right? We know this, but here we are trying to do this for the sake of good faith, right? Yet this person was unable to recognize that our emotions, that our experience has actual monetary value. So yes, Tulsa, I'm glad we're finally making the Tulsa riots, you know, the massacres, a part of our oral history, you know, bringing it into spaces like to remind ourselves of the atrocities of all of that. Missed brilliance is the worst atrocity of them all, is that we had a light to shine. It's like my grandfather, his father was born enslaved. My grandfather never knew how to learn to read or write, you know, but he was brilliant, you know, mechanic, machinist. It's like, so like, what could he have been? It's that question of what could we have been if, all of this had not happened. That's my liberation. I want that. I want that you took from me and my peace of mind and my comfort. So whatever that means, that $2,000 that will pay her mortgage for the month, she can rest and be with her children and find time to recuperate, maybe take a little vacation, give the Black woman some time to heal from the harm of being unprotected. How is that not understandable? Like, I don't understand why that doesn't make any sense. Why, when it comes to everything else has a dollar amount, like you said, and we are in this capitalist society, like how come it applies to all y'all? But when it comes to my needs and what we need to thrive and survive, all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, we don't do that. We don't value, we don't combine emotions and money over, like, okay, like I'm not buying it anymore. I'm just not. There is a dollar amount. There is this, and it does translate into peace of mind. It does translate into healing. It does translate into paying for your therapist twice a week now, twice, 3 times a week now, because we have a lot. We have a lot. Big bill, So like there is places we can find to spend our money the way we know how to spend it. We like to take risks. We like to be innovative, but the nonprofit system is it's like the vehicle of which, like, everything you could put in racism, sexism, classism, all these things, that you could fit it all into the nonprofit, like, nice, neat bundle, because it just keeps it moving forward. It's like it just is the vehicle that keeps all of these things moving forward. This continual built-in cycle, like of dependency, of what do you call it? Conflict of interest. These big organizations that have managed to fail upward, like these ladies were talking about, they don't want to see the end of homelessness. They don't want to see the end of it because they'll be out of a job, you see. So like this built-in. So it is now the time. We've heard it tonight. We're now thinking about our own legacy, right? Because we don't want to do that. We don't want to build an institution now because we're creating things now. We're taking organizations in new places, like, organize, like being around Black people. Oh my God, what a privilege. Like all day, Nina, like, like it's addicting, like it's really hard to get out of that. And, Vivian, you're feeling the same thing. Like, I'm addicted to this. I don't need that anymore. We're figuring it out over here. Because we're just, again, remembering, we're just picking up what was burnt down, just remodeling it so it fits. It fits today, but we need the resources to do that. We need the tools. We need the things that have been taken from us to take all these things out, the ashes and the smoke and and build something better and beautiful, the world's never seen before. I don't even know what we're gonna do. Like, I don't even know.
Reclaiming
brilliant.
space.
Yes, on our terms, with the money that we deserve. Yes, I love y'all. This is beautiful.
We do, to Vivian's point, we should create like a video cast lecture series with Julia. We'll have some nice, like, Nina's got good voices. She's a theater kid. We'll let Nina do the introduction or something. Maybe we'll just start a podcast. I don't know. Maybe this is what is this the birth of? Something. Be like, Roxanne, we signed you up for a podcast. Sorry, like you need to add that to your list of a million things to do. Everybody, thank you for sticking with this panel, and like super extreme thanks to each of you, and to Roxanne, and like I lift my hands up to her, and just like I am so grateful for each of you. I'm glad that we have this recorded, that it's captioned, that we have ASL, that this will be accessible to a lot of folks. We're only gonna have about 10 minutes for the breakout rooms, and I think we heard back for our ASL interpreters. We're not going to need the interpreters once we go into breakout rooms. So we just have 10 minutes when we do that. Bibiana also, captioner, ASL interpreters, and panelists, you are free to go and rejuvenate yourself. And we're just going to have like 10 minutes in our separate breakout rooms. We'll have a BIPOC caucus and a white caucus. If you can drop those or the breakout rooms in the chat, Vivian or Natonia, and then we will go into to those groups and we'll have some discussion, and we'll come back at, let's come back at like 1:55. So I'll give you 15 minutes. We'll come back at 1:55 to kind of close out. Breakout rooms are open. You can select the room that you would like to be in. And again, just super gratitude to everyone for being here. Nina, Julia, Vivian, Tanasha, Brandon, Bibiana. I just gave Tanasha a lot of names to spell. Oh my gosh. I'm sorry. So quick, so quick. Just thank you. Extreme gratitude to each of you. So go ahead and choose your breakout room, whether you identify with the White Caucus or the BIPOC caucus, and then we will rejoin at 1:55. Okay, everybody. For sticking around and participating in that in the conversation. And I just wanted to let you know, we'll send an email out through Eventbrite and the cohort email list that we will send a one sheet that has all the video links and recaps of each lunch and learn so that people can go back and watch them. We'll have them on our website. We'll make sure that they're on the YouTube channel and make that accessible to everybody. So we'll send that information out, a recap of the series with all the video links, where you can find them in case you lose your emails like I do sometimes. So it'll be on the website, be on the YouTube channel. We'll continue to post that, but I just wanted to thank you all for participating and for being here. And I hope that what you were able to take away was meaningful, and that you're able to share that with like your community folks moving forward. We dropped a survey in the chat. If you'll just take a couple minutes to fill that out. And with that, I will give you all, you can all go and take care of yourselves in whatever way that you need to. Click on the survey link though before you go, if you just have a few minutes. Heidi?
I don't know if you mentioned at the big top of this, this is the last of the series, but I just wanted to thank you, Alina, because you put so much, and then some of us helped a little bit, some helped a lot, but you carried the most of this work, and it's been a remarkable 5 sessions and 6 sessions. I've been hearing about it all over the place, where all the circles that I travel, and it's there's a lot of gratitude for your work. Seattle Center and the arts community of Seattle are very, very lucky to have you as a part of the infrastructure of making change.
Heidi. I appreciate that, and I just appreciate being in community with all of you. And we will have more lunch and learns and more series, but I so appreciate I appreciate being in community, because I think sometimes it's hard not to have coworkers, but I know, like, just from this room and other lunch and learns, that I have a community of people that are here. Even if I'm technically the only staff person, I really appreciate all the support, and like Vivian and Natonia and Heidi and Harold and Heather and Jackie, and like people that consistently came to those meetings to plan this. I really appreciate you. So thank you.